Right now, at this moment, in the ancient city of Axum in northern Ethiopia, a monk is burning incense. He has been there his entire life. His predecessor was there before him, going back in an unbroken line for over 2,000 years. He is not praying before an empty altar. He sleeps beside what he guards. He rises before dawn to light the incense. He recites the Psalms in Ge'ez, the ancient Ethiopian language, the same language in which those psalms have been recited over the same object for over 2 millennia. He never leaves the compound, he never will. When he dies, another man will be appointed, a single monk chosen for life, who will take his place and continue the vigil. The guardian monk of the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum. He is not guarding a tradition. He is not guarding a memory. He is standing vigil over the most powerful object God ever placed on this earth. The Ark of the Covenant is in Africa. I need to say that again, not because you misheard it, but because the weight of it requires a second pass before it can be properly absorbed. The Ark of the Covenant, the object that stopped the Jordan River for the Israelites to cross. The object whose presence killed 70 men of Beth Shemesh who looked inside it. The object that caused the walls of Jericho to fall. The object the Philistines captured in battle and then returned in terror when it brought plague upon every city it was moved through. The object before which the Shekinah, the visible glory of God, dwelled in the Holy of Holies of Solomon's temple, so concentrated, so overwhelming, that the priests could not stand to perform their service on the day Solomon dedicated the temple. That object is in Africa. It has been in Africa for over 2,700 years, and Solomon put it there, not because he lost it, not because his enemies took it, not because Israel grew careless, but because the wisest man who ever lived made a deliberate decision, executed through his own son, for one specific reason that the mainstream scholarly world has spent centuries not quite wanting to say out loud. Tonight, I want to show you that reason. I want to show you the evidence, not from legend, not from tradition, but from the biblical text itself, that the ark was deliberately moved, that it was gone from Jerusalem before the Babylonians arrived, and that Solomon himself understood that the only guardian worthy of God's most sacred object was the nation he had chosen to carry it, the nation descended from his own blood, on the continent that had held the knowledge of God before Israel existed. Africa. Let me begin with the passage that started this for me. 2 Chronicles chapter 35 verse 3. Most people who have read Chronicles many times have passed over this verse without stopping. I understand why. It appears in the middle of the religious reforms of King Josiah, an energetic reforming king who ruled from approximately 640 BCE to 609 BCE. Josiah is tearing down the high places, destroying the Asherah poles, dismantling the altars built in the compromised years of his predecessors. He is attempting to restore the temple to the state Solomon had established, and in the middle of this restoration project, he issues an order to the Levites. Here is the verse. He said to the Levites, who instructed all Israel and who had been consecrated to the Lord, "Put the holy ark in the house that Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, built. It is not to be carried on your shoulders. Now serve the Lord your God and his people Israel. Put the holy ark in the house that Solomon built. Put it back." Now stop here, because that phrase, "put it back," contains within it a fact that most readers of Chronicles have simply absorbed without registering what it implies. The ark had been moved. It had been removed from the temple and was being carried around on the shoulders of the Levites, as the instruction to stop doing this makes explicit. Josiah is telling the Levites to return the ark to the temple, to put it back where it belongs, and to stop carrying it on their shoulders as if it were being transported. The ark was not in the temple, it was in transit. But here is the question that 2 Chronicles does not answer. Who moved it? When? Why? The text is completely silent. Josiah's order gives us only the present instruction, not the historical explanation. We are not told when the ark was removed, by whose authority, or in what direction it was moved. The most guarded, most sacred, most powerful object in the history of Israel vanishes from the biblical record, exits the temple between the last confirmed location in 1 Kings and this verse 3 centuries later, without any explanation at all. a canonical silence. The kind of silence that tells you, if you have spent enough time reading ancient texts, that the people who wrote the surrounding material knew what the silence was about and chose to leave it as silence. Something happened to the ark, and the text refuses to say what. Now let me show you the second piece of evidence, the last confirmed location of the ark in the biblical record. 1 Kings chapter 8, verses 6 through 9. Solomon has completed the temple. The great ceremony of dedication is taking place. The priests carry the ark into the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctuary, behind the veil, into the darkness where God has said he would dwell. The ark is placed beneath the wings of the cherubim, and verse 9 tells us, there was nothing in the ark except the 2 stone tablets that Moses had placed in it at Horeb, where the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after they came out of Egypt. The 2 tablets, the covenant in stone, the original revelation at Sinai. This is the last moment in the biblical record when the location of the ark is stated with certainty. After 1 Kings 8, the ark ceases to be mentioned as a located object, until 2 Chronicles 35, 3 centuries later, where Josiah's instruction implies it has been somewhere in transit. 3 centuries of silence, and then one verse that raises more questions than it answers. Now here is the third piece of evidence, and this one I believe is the most compelling of all. 2 Kings chapter 25, verses 13 through 17, Jeremiah chapter 52, verses 17 through 23. These are the accounts of what Nebuchadnezzar's army did to the temple when they destroyed it in 586 BCE. The lists of spoil taken by the Babylonians are extraordinary in their detail. Every object is catalogued. The 2 bronze pillars, Yakin and Boaz, that stood at the entrance to the temple, described, measured, catalogued. The sea of cast metal, the 12 bronze bulls beneath it, described. The movable stands and their bronze basins, the pots, the shovels, the wick trimmers, the dishes, the censers, the gold, the silver, the bronze, everything taken, everything listed. Nebuchadnezzar's scribes were thorough. The Babylonian bureaucratic tradition was meticulous in its accounting of conquered spoil. Every temple vessel, every ornamental piece, every object of value in Solomon's temple is on the list. The Ark of the Covenant is not on the list, not mentioned, not absent with an explanation, not described as having been destroyed, not noted as having escaped. Simply absent. The most valuable, most symbolically significant object in the temple, the object that would have been the supreme trophy of any conqueror, the object that the Babylonians certainly knew was the most sacred possession of the Israelites, is simply not there. And the Babylonians do not appear to notice because they were not looking for it, because they had already been told, perhaps by the Levites themselves, perhaps through intelligence gathered before the siege, that the ark had already been removed. The Babylonians catalogued what was in the temple. The ark was not in the temple. It had been gone for years, for generations perhaps, removed sometime in the 3-century gap between 1 Kings 8 and 2 Chronicles 35, by someone who had the authority to move it, and the knowledge of where it needed to go. I want to be precise about one thing here, because I know some of you are already raising a question. The scholarly consensus has offered several explanations for the ark's absence from the Babylonian spoil list. Some say it was destroyed when the temple was burned, but the Babylonian account records the fire and then lists what the soldiers retrieved from the ruins. If the ark had been destroyed in the fire, there would presumably be a note of its destruction or of the missing gold that cased it. Some say it was hidden in a chamber beneath the temple. This is possible. There are traditions, the rabbinic literature preserves a version of this, that say Josiah himself hid the ark in a prepared chamber before the Babylonians arrived. But this explanation cannot account for 2 Chronicles 35. If Josiah hid the ark, he hid it after his own instruction to the Levites to carry it, which means the ark was still somewhere in transit, still movable, still not in its permanent place in the temple, even at the late date of Josiah's reign. And some scholars, working in a tradition that goes back to the earliest Ethiopian Christian sources, say the most straightforward explanation is the correct one. The ark left Jerusalem. It was carried out voluntarily by people who had access to it, who knew what they were doing. and who had been authorized to carry it to a destination that was not only safe, but sacred. The oldest continuous documentation of where the Ark went has been maintained, without interruption, in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, in the city of Axum, in the chapel of the tablet, under the vigil of a single monk, for over 2,700 years. Let me take you now to the account of how it happened. I want to be careful here, because I know that when I say the words Kebra Nagast, some of you, particularly those from a Western academic tradition, will reach for the category of legend, folk tradition, national myth, compiled in the 14th century, not canonical, not verifiable. I understand that reflex, I have had it myself, but let me show you what the Kebra Nagast is and is not. The Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings, is Ethiopia's national epic. The version we have was compiled in the 14th century from older manuscripts, but the tradition it records is significantly older. The Gaze oral and written tradition from which it draws traces back to the earliest centuries of Ethiopian Christianity, which predates Roman Christianity, predates the Council of Nicaea, predates the canonical decisions that defined what Western Christians now read as their Bible. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is one of the oldest continuous Christian institutions on earth. It did not derive its traditions from Rome. It derived them from Alexandria, from the Jewish communities of the ancient Near East, and from a specific history of connection with Jerusalem that goes back to the Queen of Sheba and Solomon's own son. Now you already know the broad outlines of that story. We covered the Queen of Sheba in an earlier video. You know that the Ethiopian tradition identifies her as Queen Makeda, that her visit to Solomon produced a son named Menelik, and that Menelik carried Solomon's lineage into Ethiopia. Tonight I want to go deeper into what the Kebra Nagast describes after Menelik's birth, because this is the part that most summaries leave out. Menelik, as a young man, travels to Jerusalem to meet his father. Solomon recognizes him immediately. They are, by all accounts in the Kebra Nagast, an extraordinary pair, father and son, meeting for the first time as adults, each recognizing in the other the same intelligence, the same authority, the same quality of mind. Solomon wants Menelik to stay. He wants to make him his heir. The firstborn son of the wisest man alive, the grandson of the great David, carrying both the royal blood of Israel and the blood of the Queen of Sheba. Solomon has reason to want this young man to inherit Jerusalem, but Menelik is Ethiopian. His mother is Ethiopian. His people are Ethiopian. He will not stay. He returns to Ethiopia, and with him, or rather immediately before him, arranged without his explicit knowledge by a group of young men who are the sons of the Jerusalem priestly elite, travels something that changes everything. The sons of the Levitical priests and of the Jerusalem nobility, who have been designated to accompany Menelik back to Ethiopia, decide on the night before their departure that they cannot leave Jerusalem without bringing the most sacred object with them. Their leader is a young man named Azariah, son of Zadok the high priest. Azariah has access that no ordinary person would have. He is the son of the high priest. In a vision, according to the Kebra Nagast, he is told what to do. He and his companions take the ark from the Holy of Holies and replace it with a replica so accurate in its appearance that when the priests perform their duties the following morning, they notice nothing. The original ark travels south with Menelik, and what happens when Solomon discovers it? This is the moment I keep coming back to, because this is the moment that tells you everything about Solomon's state of mind. Solomon discovers that the ark has been taken. The Kebra Nagast is clear that he learns this before Menelik has traveled too far to be recalled. He does not send the army. He does not dispatch his soldiers after his own son and the most powerful object in his kingdom. He prays. He prays. And then the Kebra Nagast records his response in words that are to me among the most revealing things attributed to Solomon in any text. He says, in substance, if God allowed it to be taken, then God intended it to be taken. Who am I to pursue what God has chosen to move? The wisest man alive makes a deliberate choice not to bring the ark back. Why? Here is the answer. And this is the reason the title of this video promises. The one reason Solomon sent the ark to Ethiopia, or more precisely, the one reason Solomon did not stop the ark from going to Ethiopia when he had the power to do so. Look at what was happening in Jerusalem. 1 Kings chapter 11. Solomon builds the temple in 1 Kings 6 and 7. He dedicates it in 1 Kings 8. God appears to him in 1 Kings 9 and reconfirms the covenant. And then 1 Kings 11 happens. Solomon loved many foreign women, besides Pharaoh's daughter, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and they turned his heart after other gods. Solomon began building high places for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites, for the gods of his other wives. Solomon, the man who built the temple, the man whose prayer of dedication called down the Shekinah, the visible glory of God, into the Holy of Holies so powerfully that the priests could not stand. This man was burning incense to Chemosh and Molech in Jerusalem. 40 years into his reign, Solomon's own city had become a place of idols. The temple still stood. The sacrifices were still performed. The priests still served. But something had fundamentally changed about Jerusalem. The covenant was compromised. The city that was supposed to be the guardian of God's most sacred object was also the city where the king himself was building altars to false gods. And the Ark of the Covenant, the physical throne of God, the dwelling place of the Shekinah, the object whose holiness was so absolute that the high priest could only approach it once a year after weeks of preparation, was sitting inside that compromised city. Solomon understood, with the clarity that made him the wisest man alive, that the Ark could not remain where idols had already entered. Not because the Ark was physically threatened, because the charge it carried, the concentrated divine presence, the covenant relationship sealed in fire and glory on the day of the temple's dedication, could not coexist indefinitely with the idolatrous compromise that his own city had allowed. The Ark needed a guardian nation, not a guardian army, not a guardian institution, a guardian nation to people whose faith was rooted in covenant rather than empire, whose relationship with God was ancient and uncorrupted, whose bloodline was connected to Solomon himself through the woman whose wisdom had caused even Solomon to say that the half was not told to him. Jerusalem had become a city of compromised kings. Ethiopia, his son's kingdom, his blood in a nation that had never bent its knee to Chemosh or Molech, was uncorrupted. The Ark needed to go where the covenant could still be kept pure. Solomon let it go, not out of weakness, not out of resignation, out of the same wisdom that built the temple in the first place. The wisest man alive understood that the most sacred object on earth needed the most faithful guardian on earth, and he trusted African faith above all other faith available to him. Now let me show you the living proof, because I do not want to leave you with only ancient texts and medieval epics. There is proof that is present tense, happening right now, in 35,000 locations across Ethiopia. Every Ethiopian Orthodox Christian church, all 35,000 of them, contains within it a tablet. A tablet is a replica of the Ark, or more precisely, a replica of the tablets of the covenant that the Ark contained. It rests in the innermost sanctuary of every Ethiopian church. It is carried in procession on feast days, covered and shrouded, borne on the shoulders of priests, exactly as the original Ark was borne in the wilderness. Every Ethiopian church is, in theological understanding, a sanctuary of the Ark's presence. Every Ethiopian Christian, from the moment they are baptized into a church that contains a tablet, stands in the direct liturgical inheritance of the covenant carried south from Jerusalem over 2,700 years ago. This is not mythology. This is the largest continuous liturgical witness in the history of Christianity. 35,000 churches, each one maintaining the tradition, each one carrying the replica, each one pointing in its architecture and its theology toward the one original, resting in the chapel of the tablet in Axum, under the incense and the psalms of a single guardian monk. No other Christian tradition anywhere on earth has maintained a comparable continuity. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is older than the Roman Catholic Church as an institution. It was receiving the Ark's liturgical tradition before Paul had written his letters. Before the Council of Nicaea decided which books would enter the canon, before Rome had heard of Christianity at all. 35,000 tablets, one original, the most powerful sustained act of liturgical witness in the history of the faith, and it is entirely African. I want to tell you now about a moment that I have told partially before, when I visited Axum. I mentioned it briefly in an earlier video, standing at the outer enclosure of the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, approximately 50 meters from the Chapel of the Tablet. I mentioned the guardian monk appearing briefly and disappearing. I told you I could not go closer, but what I did not tell you, and what I filed away and held for a long time trying to understand it, was what I felt at that boundary. Not what I observed, what I felt. I am a scholar with a doctorate from SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. I have credentials that have opened archives in 6 countries: Ethiopia, Israel, Egypt, Nigeria, the United Kingdom, the United States. I have worked in the British Library and the Israel Museum, in private collections in Addis Ababa. I have been admitted to libraries and manuscript repositories that most researchers spend careers trying to access. At the Chapel of the Tablet in Axum, I was admitted to 50 meters, no further. A single monk living inside a compound, an old man in white robes who appeared at the entrance, looked at me for a moment with eyes that carried a kind of calm I still find difficult to describe, and then simply returned inside, had no obligation to let me in. My SOAS doctorate meant nothing. My British academic credentials meant nothing. My professional publications and conference papers meant nothing. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church's authority over the Ark does not recognize any external rank. Not Vatican authority, not academic authority, not diplomatic authority. One monk appointed for life, accountable to one institution, holding one tradition. At the boundary, all the categories that I had spent my adult life building, the frameworks that opened doors in 6 countries, counted for nothing. I stood at that 50-meter mark for a long time. I expected to feel frustrated. I expected to feel the professional irritation of a researcher who has worked hard to be in the right place and finds the final door closed. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Something I had not felt since I was 8 years old, sitting on the floor of my grandmother's house in Nasuka, being told by an elder that some things are too sacred for your level of understanding yet. Some things are kept by those who have been faithful long enough to be trusted, not inaccessible forever. But not accessible to you today, at your current level, on your terms. Standing at that boundary in Axum, 50 meters from what may be the most significant object in human religious history, refused without explanation and without apology by a monk whose name I never learned, I did not feel rejected. I felt at home. Something in that refusal felt more honest than any scholarly access I had ever been granted. The monk was right to refuse me. He was right to refuse everyone, because the Ark is under African ecclesiastical authority, Ethiopian authority, authority that traces its legitimacy not from Rome, not from Geneva, not from Canterbury, not from any institution whose credentials I carry, from Solomon, through Menelik, through 2,700 years of unbroken vigil. Standing at that boundary, I understood something I had not understood before. Africa is under no obligation to explain the Ark to anyone, least of all to a British-trained academic carrying the papers of institutions that, for most of their history, did not believe Africa had anything worth protecting. Now I want to address a question I know is forming in some of your minds. The British scholar Edward Ullendorff, one of the foremost 20th century scholars of Ethiopian languages and culture, professor at the University of London, claimed to have seen the Ark in 1941. He was in Axum during the British military administration, following the liberation of Ethiopia from Italian occupation. He claimed he was allowed into the Chapel of the Tablet, and that what he found was a medieval wooden box, not an ancient Ark. His conclusion: the object in Axum is not ancient. It is a medieval artifact, possibly 13th or 14th century. The Ethiopian Church's response to Ullendorff was measured, precise, and, I believe, theologically correct. You were shown what you were permitted to see. In the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, the Ark's actual appearance is not considered separable from the authority of those who approach it. What is revealed to an unauthorized observer is what that observer is able to receive, not necessarily the full reality of the object. This is not evasion. This is consistent with the operating logic of the entire Ark tradition in the Hebrew scriptures. The Ark killed 70 men of Beth Shemesh, who looked inside it out of curiosity. The Ark afflicted the Philistines with plagues in every city it was moved through. The Ark's approach killed Uzzah when he reached out to steady it without priestly authority. The object in Axum in this tradition does not reveal itself to whoever walks through the door with the right academic credentials. It reveals what it chooses to reveal, to those it chooses to receive. Holendorf saw a medieval wooden box. The Ethiopian church says yes, and what you were shown was appropriate to your standing. I am not in a position to adjudicate between those two claims, but I will tell you that, standing at 50 meters, refused entry without explanation, I found the church's position considerably more coherent than any argument I could construct from my own side of the boundary. There is one more dimension to this that I find impossible to overlook. The Islamic tradition knows this story, not from the Kebra Nagast, from the Quran itself. Chapter 27, verses 17 through 44. The chapter of the ant. The account of Suleiman, Solomon, and the Queen of Sheba. The Quran's account of Suleiman is extensive and precise in ways that confirm the ancient Hebrew sources at point after point. But I want to draw your attention to one specific figure who appears in the Quran's account, verse 40. And one who had knowledge of the scripture said, I will bring it to you before your gaze returns to you. This is the scene where the throne of Sheba, the queen's royal throne, an enormous ceremonial object, is transported from Yemen to Jerusalem in what the Quran describes as an instant, before Suleiman's eye could blink. The one who does this is identified in Islamic commentary, Ibn Kathir al-Tabari and others, as Asif ibn Barkhia, Solomon's scribe, a man who possessed a fragment of God's greatest name, a portion of the divine name of such concentrated power that physical reality obeyed it. I am not claiming the throne of Sheba was moved by the same mechanism as the Ark. I am pointing out that the Quran records, in the same passage that confirms Solomon's relationship with the Queen of Sheba, the principle of sacred objects moving by divine permission. Not by theft, not by force, by divine will, enacted through those who possess the knowledge to serve as instruments of that will. The Kebra Nagast says the Ark moved by divine permission. Azariah was shown in a vision what to do. The Ark's own inner light departed willingly, according to the Ethiopian account. Solomon, when he discovered the Ark was gone, prayed and accepted the transfer. Both the Christian Ethiopian tradition and the Islamic Quranic tradition, independent of each other, preserve the same understanding. Sacred objects move when God moves them, not when empires move them. The Babylonians did not take the Ark. They could not. By the time they arrived, it was already gone, traveling by divine permission through a chain of faithful hands to the continent that had been chosen to receive it. I want to bring this together now, because I need to say clearly what the evidence points to, not legend evidence. 2 Chronicles 35, verse 3. The Ark was moved. Someone had removed it from the temple. Josiah commands the Levites to return it. The text says, put it back. The Ark was in transit. 1 Kings 8, verses 6 through 9, the last confirmed location of the Ark, Holy of Holies, Solomon's temple. After this, canonical silence. 2 Kings 25. The Babylonian destruction of the temple is recorded in extraordinary detail. Every gold vessel, every bronze pillar, every furnishing is catalogued. The Ark is not on the list, not because the scribes forgot it, because it was not there. 1 Kings 11. Solomon's own city had been compromised by idolatry. The Ark could not remain in a city where the king himself was building altars to Chemosh and Molech. The Kebra Nagast, the most detailed account of the Ark's journey, preserved in the oldest continuous Christian tradition on earth, in an institution that predates Rome's canonical authority. The Tabot, 35,000 Ethiopian churches, each containing a replica, maintaining the liturgical witness without interruption for over 2,000 years. The guardian monk, one man appointed for life, standing vigil at this moment, in Axum, while you listen to this. The evidence converges. The Ark is in Africa, It has been in Africa since Solomon made the most consequential decision of his reign, not to build the temple, he built it for God, but to release the temple's most sacred object, to release it to a guardian nation whose faith would not be compromised by the kings that came after him. Now I need to speak to you directly, not to the skeptic in you, to the part of you that already knew. If you are African, or if Africa lives in your blood through the generations, if your grandmother prayed in a language that carried older knowledge than the institutional church gave her credit for, hear this carefully. The Ark of God's covenant rests on African soil. It has rested on African soil while empires rose and fell, while the Roman Empire came and went, while the slave trade attempted to sever Africans from their spiritual inheritance, while European colonization attempted to replace African spiritual knowledge with a version of Christianity stripped of its deepest roots. Throughout all of it, through every century, through every attempt to tell Africans that the sacred was elsewhere, that the holy was located in Rome or Geneva or Canterbury, the monk in Axum was burning incense, the tablet was in 35,000 churches, the covenant was being maintained, not by the institutions that claimed authority over it, by the people Solomon trusted with it. The Ark did not end up in Africa by accident. It did not end up there because of a quirk of history or a series of fortunate events. It ended up there because Solomon understood something that his successors forgot, and that the mainstream institutional church has never been taught to say clearly. African faith was the most trustworthy faith available. African faith, rooted in covenant, ancient before Israel existed, uncorrupted by the idolatries of empire, was the guardian faith the Ark needed. Solomon sent his own blood to guard it. He gave Ethiopia the task that Jerusalem had already proven it could not fully perform. Every time you felt or heard others say that Africa was far from God, that the sacred was located in churches built by European missionaries, in institutions that required African communities to receive their own spiritual inheritance as a gift from outside, that story was false. The opposite was true. For over 2,700 years, while all of that was being said, the covenant of God was resting on African soil, kept by African hands, under the incense of an African monk, witnessed by 35,000 African churches. I want to give you now not a ritual, not a protocol, not a sequence of steps, something different, a declaration. Because this video is not about what to do, it is about who you are. Tonight, wherever you are in Africa, or wherever in the world Africa lives in your blood, stand up, place your right hand on your chest, and speak this aloud. Speak it with the certainty of Menelik's mother, who taught her son that the covenant blood of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba ran through him, and that no power on earth could remove what God had placed in his lineage. Say this: the Ark of God's covenant rests on African soil. I am heir to this covenant. What God protected in Africa, he will protect in me. Speak it once, not as a wish, not as a hope, not as a prayer that something might be true, as a statement of what is already true. The Ark is in Africa. You are heir to what Africa kept. The covenant Solomon trusted to African hands is the same covenant you stand in tonight. I want to close with something the monk in Axum does not know. He does not know you are listening. He does not know that right now, in this moment, the fact of his vigil is reaching people across the world, Nigeria and Ghana and Kenya, Texas and London and Melbourne, who have never heard his name and will never see his face. He is burning incense. He is reciting the Psalms in Gaius. He is doing what his predecessor did, what his predecessor's predecessor did, in an unbroken line across 2,700 years. He is not praying before an empty altar. He is standing in for you, in a chapel you cannot enter, before an object whose presence the church has protected through every century of human history that followed Solomon's decision. When he rises tomorrow before dawn to light the incense again, before the sun comes up over Axum, before the city wakes, before the pilgrims arrive at the outer enclosure, he will be standing at his post, as he has always stood. The Ark is in Africa, and Africa has always known how to keep what God entrusts to it. Sleep well tonight, or perhaps don't, now that you know where the vigil is being kept and whose covenant it is that the monk is standing in for.